A night that offered up so much promise, hope and expectation ultimately ended in disappointment at Kenilworth Road on Friday night as the town got smashed and grabbed by Queen's Park Rangers to lose 2-1. Alongside me to reflect on disappointing evening at the Kenny is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Jimbo, it's like they always say, isn't it? The hope that kills you.
It gave us a good kick in that other night, didn't it?
It did indeed, yeah. We'll reflect on the game, the good, the bad, and all the bits that go in between right after this intro.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul. We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the longest running Luton Town podcast, sponsored this season by Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. You're listening to the QPR review episode of the podcast, 2-1 defeat Friday night. And as I said in the intro, Jimbo's alongside me as always, and we're recording this an extra day after what we normally would do. I did a family outing on Sunday, which put this back to Monday night. What are your immediate recollections sort of 3 days on?
Just one a complete befuddlement, I think, really. Luton were in control of that game all day long. I couldn't see QPR getting back into it whatsoever. 3 minutes of just pure calamity. And it's not like it's unseen and unheard of calamity before, is it? It's just a couple of new protagonists involved. And after that, it just felt like one long procession towards disappointment. And I mean, colour me concerned, basically, really. But also at the same time, I understand there were some good aspects, but people were not really seeming to touch on any of those.
No, maybe the fact that we've left this an extra day will mean that people that are watching or listening will see some of the sort of positive aspects that we will talk about because they were there. Ultimately, the thing that everyone cares about was disappointing, the result. But there were positives, and we'll reflect on those. But start off with the team news. First and foremost, huge positive in terms of team news because there was a certain T. Mengi on the subs bench. In the last podcast that we did, the last review podcast that we did, we were expecting to say goodbye to him. Turns out that Fabrizio Romano's contacts aren't all up to scratch. And Ted Mengi is still here, and played 45 minutes off of the bench. So that was a positive. However, I mean, I've got to say my heart sunk again when we've gone from a really positive performance with a back forward at their place to go back into this back five. And we can't say that it didn't work, right? Because some of the stuff that we'll talk about coming up shows that it did work. We just don't look as convincing defensively in a back five as what we did in the two occasions this season that we've played a back four, the Portsmouth hour after the sending off and Tuesday night against QPR in the cup. We just look more comfortable, convincing defensively than we do in a five. So, and I messaged you, didn't I? For the love of God, please keep us in a back four. And it's not the reason we lost, but it's just having put in such a positive showing down there with a back four, you'd just love to have seen us giving it one more go again against a team who are only ever going to play one up front.
Yes, but, I mean, when you look at it like that there was a 4 at Loftus and a 5 at Kenilworth Road, perhaps that's something to do with Marvellous Nakamba being on the team sheet. And maybe once he comes back, or also Tom Krause comes back, I understand that he will probably be available for selection once the international breaks out of the way. Maybe then there's a little bit of that solidity in front and Rob has more confidence in going with that 4 because, it worked at Loftus Road. And my heart sank a little bit but I was more overjoyed that Mengi was still at Luton. I knew a little while before, to be fair. And there was interest in him, but I think we understand that it was quite ridiculous interest, which is to say that they tried to get him on the cheap for peanuts, and they got laughed at the country. So that's good, and the fact that he's staying. But it's one of those ones where he's been talking for a long while, Rob Edwards, hasn't he, about players being unsettled, and that doesn't necessarily mean that because they want out. But they're hearing these rumours, and if they're ambitious players, which they all are, we've talked about in the previous podcast, they've got this sort of relentless optimism, most footballers, that probably we don't have as people in the stands. They want to play at the highest level, and that's fair enough. But he's going to be here till at least January, and hopefully more. So that's a positive, and hopefully all that we can draw a line under it now. We can get that out of the way once we come back from the international break. But as it turned out, really, apart from a sort of 5-10 minute decent start from QPR, the defence wasn't a problem for quite a while until it was.
No, it wasn't. Absolutely right. Yeah. You could tell that Mengi might have been staying because Rob made it perfectly clear, stop taking the piss, because we're Luton Town. In his pre-match press conference, he didn't say that. I've paraphrased him. He's much nicer than that.
He said clubs can't take the mick just because they're Luton and because they've, I think, come down for the Premier League was what he was saying, which is fair. They can't take the mick, and I understand that the interest was in that vein, so it didn't go anywhere, which is exactly as it should be now, because Luton are like everyone. Luton are still going to be selling clubs for a certain price, but the price is higher now. And you can't mess about like that. If Chio Benny at 27 years old is going to Ipswich for £8 million after sort of 3/4 of a season in the Premier League, then at 22 years old, Mengi, ex-Manchester United player, England under 21 international, he's going for a hell of a lot more than that. So it's you either get a load of money for him, don't you? And that's great, or he stays and hopefully he can do what he did last season, which was be one of the standout performers.
Yep, that's the Mengi saga over and done with for at least another 3 months, and we're all mighty glad about that. On the bench, Teddy Mengi, because Reece Burke kept his place in the starting lineup, and I think that was fair enough. Reece Burke played pretty well for the 45 minutes. Like you say, had pretty much nothing to do defensively. It seemed like he was feeling some sort of part of his body, and they didn't want to take any risks, even though there's an international break coming up. They didn't want to take any risks. They're probably right to do that. There's a reason why they've got 7 or 8 centre halves, is so that they don't have to flog them all senseless when there's no need to. And in truth, you and I could have played centre half in that first half. It wouldn't have made no difference, would it? There was no attacks coming our way. Like you say, maybe with the exception of the first sort of 5 or 10 minutes, it just, whether that was just the change in shape again, it took us a few minutes to get hold of the game, didn't it?
Yeah.
But when we did get hold of the game, some of the football that we played was really nice. The 2 central midfielders, Jordan Clark, Shandon Baptiste, were getting hold of the ball. They were carrying the ball into dangerous areas. They were committing players. They were finding Luton players. It was exactly what you'd want as the attacking output of those two. Obviously, you need a defensive output, which cost us later in the game. We appreciate that, and that's where Marvellous or Kraus will hopefully come in and sort out those issues. But as a midfield two, those two were really impacting the game. Okay, you could argue that each time Jordan Clark got into the areas where it could be really, really dangerous, and I kind of felt sorry for him because he was having a really good game up until the white line of the penalty box, and then it was nosebleed time sort of thing, wasn't it? Crosses were going straight out of play, or we were running down into a dead end and things like that. But chances were coming, and you did get the feeling that we were going to score sooner or later, even allowing for the fact that the front two are clearly bang out of confidence. We had a sort of a run of kind of getting to the byline and nothing doing. You got to give the 2 QPR defenders credit. I mean, is it Clark Salter? I mean, he looks a right old defender, that boy. He did when he came on the other night as well. But I really thought, this, not without it being like the Alamo or anything like that, it was a controlled, progressive, really good display that just needed a goal, and eventually it came. All right, QPR scored it for us. Very nice of them. A recycled ball from a corner goes to Shandon Baptiste, who has to be said has got a lovely delivery in the box. So if we do ever want an alternative to Alfie, we've got it, because he crossed for the goal against Celta Vigo, crossed for the goal against Burnley, and he crossed for the goal again on Friday night. Mark McGuinness really attacked the ball. As someone who sat here with a fiver on him to score first at 40-1, I really wish he'd attacked it a little bit better and put it past the goalkeeper, but he didn't. Spilled out. And there was Jimmy Dunn to, apply a lovely finish, really. And the ball just hit him and went in. I was texting everyone I knew to try and find out if there was any chance that I could claim that as a McGuinness goal, because there was a melee of bodies in front of me and it was at the other end. And they were all like, nope, sorry, you've done your fiver. And I was like, but the Town had gone in front. And you asked for that in the preview podcast. Town in front for the first time since West Ham away. And it just felt so rosy, didn't it? That goal, it was kind of reward for the hard work that we'd put in the half an hour up to it.
Yeah, it really was. It was a well-worked goal, fantastic header, well saved. And it was, I mean, it's not the story of the game, is it, at the end of the day? But for about 20, 25 minutes, it was a lovely little story that Jimmy Dunn done it again in the same goal, on the same ground. And the crowd were having a field day with him. Unfortunately, he had the last laugh. But I think it was well deserved at that stage. And for up to the half, up to the goal, the equaliser, then they didn't offer anything, QPR, and that's what's so frustrating.
Yes, it is. But what's so positive is they weren't allowed to offer anything. The front three were pressing. Chong was harassing the sort of right back. Elijah was occupying the two centre backs. Morris went to the left back. There were copious amounts of times where QPR, who I get the impression, having watched a bit of them towards the end of last season because they were on television an awful lot as Sky covered the relegation battle, like to play the ball around. They like to pass the ball around. They like to have possession of it. It's so many times they were just whacking endless balls forward. I lost count of the amount of times that McGuinness just went and recycled the ball on the edge of the box or just took it from Kaminsky. There were so many aimless long balls, and that was good because it allowed us to get on the ball. McGuinness would give it to Amari, who was really, really progressing with the football. He played a number of good passes into midfield or bypassed the two central midfielders and gave it to Chong. Some of the build-up play in that first half in particular was really nice. There was the one, wasn't there, where Amari found Chong, who brought the ball under control and flicked it around the corner to Alfie, who puts a lovely ball across. And Elijah, if he scored a goal at any time this season, he'll have just been there to tap that in. But as strikers who are out of confidence so often are, just a slight, even split second of hesitation, and that stops him from getting to the ball, doesn't he? But if he taps that in for 2-0, jobs are good and at half time, and we're really buoyant at that stage, but it doesn't happen. But even at half time, you were kind of comfortable, weren't you? There was nothing coming the other way at all. And if you said to me at half time who's going to score the next goal if the pattern of play continues, I could only have said Luton.
Yeah, me too. And I did have a little thought when Eli missed that goal, though, that how costly is that going to be? But in my own mind, as sort of disappointing that was, I could only ever see them maybe sneaking one, and then you'd have to you'd go for it, you'd get a draw, and you go, well, probably should have won that game, really, and they still should have won the game because they had that was the clear cut chance, wasn't it? And it's so frustrating for him because we know he's a confidence player. That goes in, and I think the floodgates open. He's getting chances.
This is the second half chance, isn't it? The Baptiste's played him clean through on goal.
Yeah.
That's the one that you're talking about.
That's the one I'm talking about. But even in the first half, he was at his marauding best. He was running off the shoulder. They couldn't cope with him, and he was unbelievable. Back to sort of what we expected. And if he'd not got that injury, would have been terrorising Premier League defenders doing it. And so, that second half chance, the big one, where he got slipped in one-on-one.
Lovely ball from Baptiste, as we said.
I really rate him, actually, Baptiste. I think he's coming along and he's just not going to be getting the credit that he deserves at the moment because things aren't going their way. But he's providing some wonderful assists and stuff. We wanted some creative spark from midfield, and so far, in various guises in different games, we've got it from Jordan Clark and Shandon Baptiste. So there's no problems with any of that stuff. You just can't stick it in the net. I mean, it took even Rangers to put the ball in the net for Luton to get them off the mark, and it's just so unbelievably frustrating. Obviously, there was one at the end that we'll get to as well, which is even more so. It's just like this is kind of where I am with it, really, because as disappointed as I am, and as disappointed as everybody should be, because they deserve to win that one, I don't think anyone can legitimately say, if they watched that game, that Luton weren't trying or they didn't play well. They can say that they didn't have any answer after the second one went in, and that's legitimate. They really didn't. People saying, well, where's the plan B? I think that overestimates the usefulness of a plan B. Plan B is when things aren't going quite right and you're on terms with something. But when you've been sucker punched like that, I don't know many teams that really can recover. It was a total sucker punch. They were reeling for ages. It was only until the last few minutes of normal time and then the 5-6 minutes of injury time where they even mounted a challenge to get anywhere near the goal. It's just one of those where it's so... You can see it's almost there, but almost there is not good enough.
No, it's not. But the positive to it being almost there is there's 42 games left, and nothing was lost on Friday night other than game of football. I mean, Eli was unlucky. The goalkeeper's arse saves that, doesn't it? He's actually beaten the dive and literally the keeper falls on it, his backside, and then he just smothers it. On another day, that squirms under his backside, and if it doesn't go in, Eli's there to nip round the other side and tap it in. But it's just the way it's going for poor Eli at the moment, and let's hope that changes and changes sometime soon. But you knew there was a feeling once that got saved. Everyone's like, oh, please don't let that come back to haunt us. But you knew it was going to. You just hoped it didn't come back to haunt us in the way that it did. If they'd scored a worldie that you can hold your hands up against, then fair enough. Worldies are going to get scored every now and again against us, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. As it is, there's nothing Rob Edwards can do about the goal that was equalised on us. We have done so well to force the geezer into an aimless long ball punt. I mean, the geezer who wins the challenge with McGuinness, Fry, wasn't it? He wasn't even where the ball was aiming. He just made a really good run to get underneath it whilst it was in the air. But McGuinness has to win the header, right? He has to. If McGuinness attacked that ball how he attacked the ball for the goal, he would have won the header. He would have dealt with the danger. Absolutely no problem. You have to deal with it. And if you don't deal with it, you have to make sure that you get back on side and force the geezer out towards the corner flag rather than allowing him to check in when the whole world and his dog is on the inside because we've been left exposed by him missing out on that long ball. You can't dress up genuine mistakes. He didn't mean to make it. I'm sure he didn't jump for the ball and think, do you know what, I can't be bothered today, I'll just make a complete cock up. Of course he didn't. It was a genuine mistake, but ultimately you can't dress it up as anything other than that. He'll know it. I don't need to tell him that. But it's in the back of our net, and that's the problem, isn't it? When teams are making mistakes against us, it's not ending up in the back of their net. We make one mistake, and there's still not a threat in the game at the point that long ball was sent forward, QPR, and then within the blink of an eye, it's in the back of our net.
There's a couple of points to it, really, that are still troubling me, really, and it is that, everybody expects that you buy a new player, and particularly if you buy somebody for £6 million, potentially rising to more, that he's going to be able to do the basics. And for most of the time he did, but it's that one time he didn't. And I've watched the replay so many times. He's not pushed out the way, he's not impeded, it just doesn't go for it in any way, and it sort of gets caught in two minds as to whether head it or let it bounce and chase after you. But you should probably never let it bounce. That's schoolboy stuff, really, isn't it? And then after that, it just gets bullied. There's mistakes all over the place because there's three defenders there, and just Maddson. And he gets it past Mengi, who also doesn't cover himself in glory, and pokes it over to Maddson, who gets it in. So that's the disappointing thing, is like if you're spending that much money, which if it's £6 million, as let's believe, that's a club record fee. You want him to be doing a lot better than that. And you hope that that's not going to have ramifications in the way that It did for old Butterfinger's goalie on his debut. What was his name? I forget.
Sluga.
No, not the other one.
Oh, Moore. Yeah.
Stuart Moore. Right.
Of course.
There we go. Got there in the end.
Both useless, to be fair.
So you hope that it doesn't have the same sort of knock on it did for him, because he did that on his debut, and that was the end of him, really, wasn't it? And
I mean, he wasn't a club record signing, which is why I confused him with Sluga, who was a club record signing. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you'd said to me, how does Mark McGuinness want the opposition to play? It's pumping long balls up that he deals with all day long. How does Mark McGuinness not want? He doesn't want a nippy little bastard running in behind him because he knows he's got no chance of catching him. So he had the perfect striker in front of him. Ultimately, he just didn't deal with the football, and he'll know it. He's got 2 weeks to stew on that, hasn't he? But the one thing that could have happened was his teammates could have bailed him out, and they didn't. Now, this team are punch drunk, aren't they? When they get knocked down, to use boxing parlance, they've been knocked down too many times, and they don't want to get back up now and get, goals are coming in clusters, in clumps, and it's not.
But here's my issue with that, is that I understand anybody that wants to say that Luton look like a team out of confidence or a team that doesn't know how to win anymore. And I think that sometimes, I've thought that at numerous points when I've tried to argue against it. There's definitely something in that. There's something in the fact that Luton have gone most of 2024 not winning football matches, and that's going to have its effect. But then you say, well, that's the players that were in the Premier League last term. How does that then affect Mark McGuinness? I don't see how that does. So then you're left with, well, what the bloody hell are you supposed to do here? Because you've got a new player in, and he's making the same mistakes. That's not Rob Edwards' fault. There's nothing he can do about that. There's no tactics whatsoever that he can say that will change the fact that he didn't head that long ball, which is what he is there to do. And so I don't know how you can come up with the conclusion 100% that it's all of them and they all don't know how to win, because he's just coming to the side.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I agree. There is a bit of a laziness about that saying. You're absolutely right. I think what we don't know how to do as a team, whether new people are coming into it or not at the minute, and to be fair, there's only one new person in there, isn't there? McGuinness. The rest of them, to an extent, Walters, but generally the players down the other side. I think where it can be labelled, we don't know how to respond to a goal against us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a major thing, which is why I said they need to start scoring the first goal. And they did that. They did everything I wanted up until that point, and then that goes in. And that is a major problem. That's the cumulative effect, but only for some of them. This is why I can't square the circle. Only for some of them that have had their noses bloodied far too many times in 2024.
Which is where I said this is a punch-drunk team. And the second goal, I mean, the first goal will have disappointed Rob Edwards because it was a mistake, but there's nothing he can do about that. The second one will have annoyed the life out of Rob Edwards, and we'll hear from him a little bit later in the podcast. James caught up with him after the game. But the second one will really annoy him because we're in control. We're in control of the ball. It's our throw-in. We've gone forward. You've got to go forward. You're 1-1 at home now. You're playing really, really well despite that last setback. You know, if you've got anything about you go on and get a winner. So we're pushing men forward and we get absolutely nailed on a counter-attack where we are so out of shape, it is untrue. Everyone's drifted to the right-hand side as the geezer goes down through the left channel. They've left two of them unmarked at the back stick. And, I mean, if Frey didn't score, the bloke behind him most likely would have done. But this is where I wonder if the three at the back works. Because the two times we've played four at the back, everyone's known who they're marking and where they're marking and where they're meant to be, and they seem a lot more settled in a back four. In a three, they all end up in, you could throw, I was going to say a blanket, you could throw a handkerchief over two of the three. You mentioned Mengi not covering himself in glory for the equaliser because he was right behind McGuinness by the time Frey played the ball across. Had Mengi have stayed with the goal scorer, not a problem, because he'd still have had to have done something to get a shot away. And they've all gone in the one direction where the guy's running through. You only need one of them to go with the bloke who's running through. The other two, stay where you are and snuff out the threats that are in the box. But they don't, and they're caught out by one cross, and it's in the back of our net. I mean, Rob calls it 3 minutes of madness. And it really was there, wasn't it? And from offering absolutely zero, in a space of 240 seconds, they've gone from comfortably losing the game in a 1-0 situation to, as I said right at the start, smashing and grabbing a 2-1 win, because Kaminsky makes one other save afterwards, but I'd have expected him to make it anyway. That aside, there was nothing coming at us.
And this is the frustration, because they were so in control of that game, and you can see it. You can understand it in the Premier League. We know that. We saw it all season. One small mistake, you get punished. But that wasn't supposed to happen when we came back down to the Championship, and it certainly wasn't supposed to happen against a QPR side completely devoid of any ideas whatsoever. So this is where all the frustration is. How does it keep happening? How do you possibly change it? Maybe one answer is the back four. It still doesn't stop the first goal. Well, it doesn't stop the first mistake. Maybe the covering does.
No, it doesn't. You're right.
If you go to a back four, maybe it's back to basics. Everybody knows what area the pitch is supposed to be in roughly, and they mark the man in that area.
And for the second one, you're likely to have a shield in front of the back four. So the bloke who ran right through the heart of our midfield before laying the ball out to the left-hand side can't do that, because someone, presumably marvellous, is going to get in his way like he did on Tuesday night. Just take the ball off him and give it to someone else. Has to be said, Amari Bell sidesteps the bloke. Just bring him down, for Christ's sake. Take the yellow card. I mean, everyone else getting the yellow card for absolutely no reason anyway, so you might as well have taken the yellow card as well. Don't be too nice. Take him out. What was he at the time? 30 yards out. If they then score from the resulting free kick, then you put your hands up and you say, fair play. That's a lot more than what you've shown over the course of the game so far. Don't sidestep him and let him go on and then play the ball out wide when you're the geezer in the position where the bloke ends up tapping in because you're out of position in the first place. So, and Amari had a really good game. All right, everything he did on the ball on Friday night was everything that Rob wants from his left-sided centre, or either side of his centre backs. When he plays this 5, taking the ball up into the midfield, making up the extra man so that we can then send another man forward, as we've highlighted in previous podcasts, etc. I get why he plays the 5, and I get how it works when we go forward. I still don't like it when we defend though, but that's by the by. But yeah. So in this situation, they've all gone towards the ball. No one's in front of them to stop the ball carrier playing the pass. And ultimately, it don't matter what level of football you play. If you leave a guy unmarked 6 yards from goal, there's an awful strong chance it's ending up in the back of your net.
Unless they've got an orange shirt on at the moment. That's how it's going, isn't it? The second goal, you have to hand it to Frey, is a pretty bloody good finish. Because he's still got a lot to do, to be fair, even though he's left that wide open with no one hindering him whatsoever. It's an excellent finish, and that's the difference between a striker who can just hit something first time compared to Elijah, who, arguably dallied a little bit on that big chance that he had. You watch the Liverpool Man United game the day after. And 2 of their goals were just hit so quickly after a decent ball that the Manchester United goalie, as bad as he is, was never going to get them anyway. And that's sort of that's elite level, obviously, but they've got aspirations to get there, particularly if you hear the post-transfer window news.
Yeah, don't worry about anything that Sean Dyche is doing in January. The only thing he's doing is sipping a few pina coladas in the Caribbean in January.
Apparently, yeah.
I mean, he might have had too many options, Elijah, mightn't he? He could have dinked the guy, could have gone round the guy, could have played it through his legs like he tried to do. It wasn't one of those. You're right, and we've said it in the past, haven't we? When it's instinctive, you fancy Eli, and when it's not, and we've said this about Harry Cornick, a couple of others, when it's not, you're kind of 50-50, especially when he's in a confidence drought, or a goal-scoring drought, sorry, like he's in at the moment.
But usually, it's one or the other, and they were absolutely potent in the Championship, very good in the Premier League as well, both of them, Morris and Elijah, and they're both so bang out of form, it's unbelievable. Morris's build-up play is suffering. His things are just bouncing off his shins and stuff. It's happened all season. How do you sort of quantify that really if you're a manager? Because he's your captain, so he's probably got to play. But I hear people talking about that you've got to make drastic decisions, and maybe he's one that comes out. But would he really be? Because he's the captain. There's not a lot of leaders in that side, vocal people anyway. That it doesn't seem. And then we've got the situation in the QPR game of what happened. Joe Taylor comes on, and he isn't the saviour after all. So even that argument from the people that, well, we're not using him, he can score goals and the other two aren't, that's fallen on its arse as well. So every sort of way you turn, really, it's like a blind alley, and you're just like, how do you solve this? It's just utterly baffling, because they were the dominant side, had the best chances, still lose the game.
Just before the Taylor chance that you referenced, Morris had a pretty good chance inside the box, didn't he? Cut inside, curled it left-footed, didn't get it out wide enough. Pretty tame save. Sorry, pretty easy save for the goalkeeper. And then the result of that was the ball got recycled. Alfie put a lovely ball in to Morris, who put it on a plate for Taylor, really, inside the 6-yard box. Goalkeeper's beaten. I think there was a defender on the line, but he's got to hit the target. And if the defender clears it, the defender clears it, and that's just how's your luck. To miss the target from there in that situation, knowing that was the last kick of the game as well. Ultimately, if you're right, if he's the saviour that everyone says he is, spoiler alert, I don't think he is, but if he is, that's got to find the back of the net. And also, the 15 minutes that he was on for, he has to impact the game a hell of a lot more than one header going over the crossbar from inside his 6-yard box. Otherwise, we're kind of down to 10 men, really. I didn't like the fact that Elijah seemed to go out wide in those last few minutes. I'd have liked him. I'd have liked him in the box. I know he's out of form, but I'd still have liked a striker in the box. And it took an age for Nelson to come on, which I didn't like either, given how well he played the night before. And when he did come on, generally, the play was positive. We'd gone through about, from the time that they scored their second goal to the time that Nelson came on, maybe 5 minutes from the end of normal time, we'd gone through a serious, we have run out of ideas period in the game here. We were huffing and puffing, but there was nothing doing. But
I largely stayed off social media because I'm finding it a bit intolerable at the moment. I think
only at the moment.
Well, it's become ever so, and I'm not just talking about football. I'm talking about that fucking space Karen that owns Twitter that is ruining it for everybody. It used to be my favourite platform, and I still trying to convince myself that it will change, but I'm not sure it ever will. But there's a lot of people, from the small amount that I could tolerate, equating that lack of ideas at that stage to an entire bad performance, and it wasn't. It definitely was after that second goal for QPR. And oh shit, what we're going to do now? And there wasn't anything. And so maybe the substitute should have really come on a bit sooner to try and impact it a bit more.
Which is unlike Rob, because he's usually very proactive with substitutions. I mean, there's a lot of people, and a lot of it's in jest, but there's a lot of people on social media who are touting about whether Rob's tactics are good and whether he only got promoted because he used Nathan's tactics with Nathan's team, and Nathan was, bring Nathan back, etc., etc., etc. When we conceded the first goal under Nathan Jones, you could have walked out of ground, because we never turned a game around when we conceded the first goal under the bloke. Forget the fact that the bloke didn't take us to the Championship and didn't take us to the Premier League. Sure, he got us on the way, and I'm not disputing at all where Nathan Jones is in the importance of Luton's last decade, massively high. But he's not the be-all and end-all that everyone thinks he is. He ran out on Luton twice because he knew he couldn't get us any further than what he had got us. We have got the guy in charge who got us to the Premier League, and we've got the right man in charge. However, his substitutions were a wee bit late and a wee bit baffling, and like you said, he's probably sat there on Friday night, him, Richie and Trolls, and they're probably like, what the fuck's happened here? 5 minutes ago, this was hunky-dory. Yeah, in an ideal world, we'd have got a second goal, finish the game off. But I doubt he could have believed it, because I certainly couldn't. it was a comfortable Friday evening until the McGuinness mistake. And there's nothing that Rob Edwards can do about that other than keep on enforcing that Elijah has to score that chance. There are big moments in games of football that turn games of football, and that was the key moment. But he doesn't need to enforce it with Elijah because the bloke's not stupid. He knows that that was the time that we had to take control of the game, and he has to score. He didn't miss it on purpose, but he missed it. And he'll probably be feeling pig sick about it now, but
we had this last season with Elijah, didn't he? He missed that absolute sitter against Spurs, and then after that, when he spent a couple of games out of the side, and then he was golden after that. This is the Elijah we've known for a number of years. When he first came on the scene, he scored in his first that one against Sheffield Wednesday. I think it was his first appearance, wasn't it? Yeah, he scored, and then he's off and running. And if he doesn't score, it sort of builds up. But when he does finally get it, people won't be saying the same things about him. It's just like it was such a big chance, and then obviously the Taylor one was a very big chance as well.
But also, let's not. If the mistake don't happen at the other end and we win the game 1-0, yeah, we'll kind of be a little bit, how the hell did we only win that 1-0? But we'll have won it. The Elijah chance is only put into the magnified sort of size that it is because of what followed for the next 5 or 10 minutes. That's football. You got to be ruthless at both ends, and we're not at the moment. But the reaction after the game, I didn't like it. Now, people pay an awful lot of money, way too much money, to watch football these days, particularly given that we're watching second tier product in terms of the division, not what we're putting out there. So what people want to do, if you want to boo, you're well within your rights. You've paid your money. If that's how you want to react, that's absolutely fine. Ditto if you want to clap. That's also absolutely fine. But have we not learned nothing in 10 years? We were in this situation 10 years ago, weren't we? We were going nowhere in the conference. Absolutely nowhere. We're still 5 games away from that Wrexham night in the conference, which was the worst night of the whole season there, where I was sat at Wrexham thinking, we're never getting out of this bloody league. We were dreadful on a Friday night. I mean, we made dreadful look good that night. That's how bad we were. We're still 5 games from that. I think we're something along the lines of 11 games. I can't remember the exact time where the Ronnie Henry fan confrontation came about. And then after that, when Steele got them together and started doing the huddles and together the team, stronger the team, together the team, and all of that came about, that we started flying. And we're going back into that where we were before John Steele started doing the huddles. People booing. I see on social media people saying, and again, it's your right to do it. Oh, I booed because they need to know that it wasn't good enough. No, they don't. They really don't need some fat fucker in the stands like myself telling them that it's not good enough. They know it's not good enough. They're not stupid. They're not losing on purpose. They're not trying on purpose. They're not doing anything on purpose. And they certainly don't need to know when it's not good enough. They're well aware of it. They don't walk around smiling and happy and everything else after they've lost a game. They know that it's not good enough. They know they're trying hard. If you heard the Jordan Clark interview on 3 Counties after the game, you'll have heard just how much he was hurting in particular. So they really don't need you to boo to tell them that it's not good enough. They're more than knowledgeable that it's not good enough. How about if you don't like it, and that's fine. I didn't particularly like it. I was fuming after the game on Friday night.
You've had to have an extra day
I've had to go to Skeg Vegas to get over it. Why not just leave? Just turn around, just walk out, just leave, because booing really doesn't help anyone. And booing the manager as he walks around when he's putting his hands up and apologising that it's not good enough and that he's taking the blame, even though largely on Friday night, and there are things that he has been guilty of which we've pointed out in this podcast so far this season, but not really Friday night. What could he have done on Friday night? He couldn't have gone and won the header for Mark McGuinness. He couldn't have gone and put the ball away for Elijah Adebayo. If both of those things happen, we're celebrating a win. We're 16th, 17th in the table or wherever we are, and we're looking forward to Millwall away. Booing the geezer who took us to the Premier League just doesn't make any sense at all to me, and it's just not for me. It's not for me anyway, but just go back 10 years and see where we were in the conference and see what togetherness and a chin up fighting spirit got us and has really contributed to our success over the last 10 years. No one had any success whilst fans were getting on players' backs. It was when everyone was together, and we're in a tough situation at the minute, and a lot of teams that do get relegated are in a tough situation, but for some reason Luton and August go together like chalk and cheese. It just doesn't seem to happen at the minute. 2 seasons ago when we won promotion, we were 1 point better off after 4 games, and we still won promotion. We still finished third. We were comfortably third that season. It's not all doom and gloom on that. And I understand that expectations are a lot higher because we've come out of the Premier League. But we're 4 games in, 2.5 of which we've played pretty good football in. We've just not done the business. Don't turn it all against us now because, this bloke does... Edwards in particular does care. We'll play an interview with him in a minute where you was in the press conference. How would you describe it?
He just had an air of, what the bloody hell else am I supposed to do? He's got them playing in a reasonable way, like quite progressive. They've kept the ball. They had the lion's share of all the stats really. And they're just continuously getting punished, and it's just like, what more can you do? You've already said he can't head the ball for McGuinness, he can't score for Elijah or Taylor. The building blocks are all there. It's just not happening, and I understand people will say, well, that's not good enough, and that's probably true, but it's not the doom and gloom that we're in at the moment. If they were playing so badly that they weren't creating anything, I think you'd be worried, but it's not that. And my fear, and I said this a couple of podcasts back, I am worried about this chipping away at the sort of unity that we've had for the last 10 years. That's so hard to get for anybody. And it's been a massive factor in Luton's progression up the leagues and this feel-good factor that's been around the place. And I think we forget because we're quite old now. 10 years is quite a long time. So maybe there's a younger support faction that doesn't see that. I also take on board that, and I've spoken about it lots of times, that the word of the season is going to be expectation. Luton are expected to do more, but it depends where your expectation level is. If you're expecting them to win the championship, I don't think that's not, for me, that's not realistic. In the season preview podcast, I said top 6, they'll get in the playoffs and then who knows? And that's fair enough. If you're expecting them to go and romp the division, I can't see that's going to happen. And then I guess people say, well, they haven't bought the right players. They haven't done well in the transfer window to even get the hopes up for that position. But what I'd say to that is that I think there's a lot of people that really have drunk the Kool-Aid of the transfer window and the transfer deadline day shenanigans that Sky have set up. It's a propaganda tool to like say, look how great the Premier League is, which isn't now, but there wasn't that much movement, and they're not the big spenders anymore. That's Saudi Arabia, even though they're not like getting the big players in their prime, apart from Ivan Toney. Weird decision. Money. And so there's this big thing about the transfer window and how you have to do. But if money was the be all and end all, and how much you spent was the be all and end all, then Burnley Football Club would not have got relegated from the Premier League last year. They did. They spent 100 million plus on players. They got relegated below Luton, who spent barely anything. So it's not the be all end all. I think you could say, well, they haven't properly replaced Chio. And I know they were trying, but I asked Rob that in the press conference, and he's not worried about that. He said, no, he thinks he's got enough cover there. So that remains to be seen. They were after a striker. That's true. We knew that. Tom Cannon was the guy. He decided he wanted to go to Stoke. Leicester didn't want to sell. He's a loan. He's gone to Stoke on loan. And now, we all know that Stoke have got very deep pockets, but they must have quite the charm offensive to keep convincing people to go there because they're a basket. Now, that's a basket case club, not Luton. But that's what it is. He's gone there, and Luton do not have another striker. But they didn't get rid of Taylor. If people have gone very quiet on Taylor, I think that he was the saviour. He was the bloke that he should be in above either or of Elijah and Carlton. But he's come in and he didn't do the job. So there's lots of different elements that aren't properly clicking, but it's not to say that they're not threatening to click. And that's just what we've got to get to. We can't at the same time, we can't keep saying this, and he knows that, Edwards knows that, and the players will know that. We can't get to 10 games and it still not be clicking in some fashion. But then before the QPR game, we were saying somebody is due a pasting.
And they still are.
Yeah. And this is football, isn't it? Everybody's so annoyed by how that defeat happened. And I understand it. You perfectly legitimately can be annoyed.
And who it was against.
Yeah.
We referenced the historical nature of this game in the preview. It would have been a bit annoying if we'd lost on Friday night in the way that we did to Sheffield United. It would have been annoying. But it's doubled down by the fact it's QPR. There's only one team in the league that would be worse to lose to. And let's hope we don't do that, because they lost at the weekend as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And also the fact that everyone was having a lovely time and they were having a good old take the piss out of Jimmy Dunn session. And because that's how swimmingly things were going, and people forget that, or they gloss over it. All of these things can be true at the same time. You can be utterly disappointed with the result and how it came about, but also quite heartened by how they were playing up until that point. Now, they've got to find a way of cutting out these mistakes. Now, we thought that the Championship would be more forgiving. Well, perhaps it's not. So you've just got to stop. You've got to cut those out. But I really firmly believe that, and he said this from the first time I spoke to him at the beginning of the pre-season, that they may be slow to start, but they'll build in and they'll get stronger and they'll grow. And I think the idea was always to get to this international break, ideally with more points than we've got, admittedly, knowing that most of the players are going to be on their way back, if not back. And then you've got a really strong squad to pick from. You've got 2 defensive midfielders now with the option. And hopefully things improve from there. But yeah, sort of, I was sitting in that press conference with Edwards, just sort of the same mind as like, I don't know how that's happened and I don't know how to fix it.
No, well, he can't. People on the pitch are the only ones that can, not making mistakes. And that's a simple walk of life, isn't it? This is second tier football. No one's going to hang around and give us charity. We've got to go out and earn it. And when we go to Millwall in a couple of weeks' time, when we create these chances, and I'm sure we will, because we've created them in every game since the Burnley game, where obviously we had the sort of injury situation that's eased up an awful lot, even since the Burnley game.
Even as abject as they were in the Burnley game, they still created that one chance they scored from, though.
Yeah. When we go to Millwall, we've got to create those chances and we've got to stick them in the back of the net. And, we know what we're going to get the other direction, don't we? We're going to get bombarded with balls in our box, because that's what Millwall's DNA have been throughout their time in the Championship, whether it's Harris as manager, Rowett as manager before him, or it's only the geezer who was there for 3 months who took Alan Campbell on loan and then decided that he wanted to play a possession-based game. He tried to change it, and as I say, he lasted 3 or 4 months and he was out on his ear, and they've gone back down to the old route of Neil Harris again. So we're going to get absolutely bombarded with balls in our box. So we're relying on McGuinness to head them this time, and Mengi. It's not just McGuinness, Mengi, Burke, whoever it may be, whichever formation we are. We'll cover that next week. But the only ones that can fix this are the players on the pitch, because they are being put, even though I don't like the back 5, they're being put into a system where they get up the pitch, absolutely no problem whatsoever. Yes, there's an awful lot of issues going the other way that need to be rectified and can be rectified. But in terms of our attacking output, which is largely what we're going to need to win games of football, it's there other than sticking the ball in the back of the net.
But even in the defensive sense, if you look at the duels won, aerial duels, Luton in the top 6, I think it's the top 4 in the Championship for duels won. It's just that the one that they were supposed to win resulted in the total collapse of that football match. But then just ordinary duels, they're in the top 6 as well of the Championship. So it's not like they're not trying, which is one of the accusations I've heard. I didn't see.
They're definitely. That's definitely not.
I didn't see a team that weren't trying. I think if you say they didn't have an idea and that's why you think they weren't trying once it was 2-1, I can see perhaps a point there, but not for the whole game. It wasn't a lack of effort whatsoever. It's just they're in this rut of losing games and capitulating. And let's be honest, it's since that Bournemouth game, isn't it? Who
thinking exactly the same.
Let's be honest, they've just done that to Everton as well. Who
that was a shame, wasn't
it? yeah, exactly. But since then, and you go 3-0 up against anybody in any division, you should win a game or at least get something from it. And them losing, and it's just been a knock-on domino effect since then. And you can sense when a goal goes in. This is why I was talking about getting the first goal. That they're like, oh no, not again. So they changed that this time. They got the first goal, deservedly so, and then a sucker punch. And in any other season, perhaps it's just that one goal, and they keep it tight for a bit, and they go again. But there's just this sort of fragility at the moment that they just expect they're going to get another punch, don't they? And it's coming. It's just I don't know how you.
Yeah, I mean, to use the boxing analogy, we don't put the guard up, do we? After we've been punched, we just leave it open for another one. And maybe there's a leader to be had at the back there. I don't know, and maybe the back three changes so often because of injuries that there's no settled approach to it all.
Well, McGuinness has been billed as the leader when he was signed. Rob there was saying he's a leader,
which makes his mistake all the more annoying, because how can you lead when you're making a mistake? And again, did he mean to make the mistake? Of course he didn't. And 9 times out of 10, he'll have made that mistake and someone will have bailed him out for it. It's just the part that we're in right now where, QPR leave a guy wide open right in front of goal. He heads it over the crossbar. Luton leave a guy wide open in front of goal and he slams it in the bottom corner. That's where we're at. And until we just need to win one game, get that confidence going again. I must say, the one thing that was encouraging, at 1-0, we try and go and get the next goal. A lot of teams who haven't won recently, when they go 1-0 up, they'll look to defend their 1-0 lead, hanging on and kind of invite pressure. That wasn't Luton on Friday night. Luton was still putting pressure on QPR. It just so happened that the mistake happened. And I'm confident that if that mistake didn't happen, we would have won the game, because they just weren't offering anything. And that's what makes this particular defeat all the more annoying. I suppose in addition to the Preston one as well, where they offered absolutely nothing either. We've lost to 2. Well, I think QPR got the potential to be an okay side. Preston are just a bang average side. You saw that at the weekend. If they're that good. And that's where the kind of disappointment comes. But let's hear from Rob. James was in the post-match press conference after the game. And here's what the dejected boss had to say.
It's on me and it's on us. There's no doubt about it. Put ourselves in a great position to win the game, 1-0 up, and I thought playing really well in the first half. I thought we were still in really good control up until their first goal. Thought we should have gone 2-0 up. Really, we had a big chance, but that can happen. But the goals were really disappointing. We've been saying that for too long. And again, it's on me, so I'm not blaming anyone now. People can make mistakes. Human beings can make mistakes, but then there's got to come a point where we've got to do all that better. We got the press on really well, forced them to go long. We've got to be able to deal with the long ball. But even when we don't, we've still got the numbers and the coverage to make sure we deal with it. We didn't. It's too easy for them to score that first goal, which rocked us for a minute or two. Don't think we should have thrown the ball into Shannon for the second goal and then didn't defend the cross. I mean, it's 3 minutes of madness have ultimately cost us. We've got to find that ruthless winning edge, and we've got to find it from somewhere. And not going to come out and say the same stuff. Oh yeah, performance, this, that, and the other. Got to own it. It's not good enough. We can't lose that game from the position that we were in tonight. How then they've scored is it's a bit beyond me at the moment. Some fans are mixed. I can feel it. They're on one hand they're thinking, we're in the Premier League, we got promoted, we did all that sort of stuff, and they're on our side. And there's some that are angry. I get it. It's 1 point from 4 games. It's on me. I understand. So yeah, I'm going around and I was saying thank you for your support and apologising to the ones where they're showing their frustration. I understand it. I've got to own that. You know, took the applause when we were winning. You know, ultimately what's happened, it will have knocked one or two, and we've got to make sure we pick ourselves up. And now we've got a couple of weeks to go and work on it, which we need to do. So, look, I've got no doubt in the group of players that are there. We know they're good enough to do well in this league. We know that. We've all seen them perform for a long time now. Got a good squad, and the results will come. But at the moment, yeah, we're having a very difficult start.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to not to feel sorry for the boss, really, because, you know, he set up a lovely game plan. Sometimes it's just, I don't know, it's just football, isn't it? But it is what it is. Let's finish this podcast off. We've got to reflect on the transfer window, James, because, you know, we've been speaking about it so much in the last month. There's no disguising the fact that Luton Town aren't as strong as they were going into it. They weren't going to be, because you can't replace Ross Barkley at second-tier level. I think we've replaced him with a second-tier footballer in Shandon Baptiste. That might be doing him a disservice. What I mean by that is he can be of the same above the level that we're playing at as Barkley was above the level of the Premier League is how I'm meant to describe that. But we haven't got a Ross Barkley, we haven't got a Sambi Lokonga, we weren't going to have those. I think people would have expected more incomings. David Wilkinson, in his programme notes on Friday night, highlighted exactly why. Just because we've got money, they're not going to go all in for the sake of going all in terms of playing poker. That's not our style, and I'm kind of fine with that.
I think that's another issue, though, isn't it? That seems to be dividing people, because there are people that were there in the bad old days, and maybe some still were in the bad old days, but they still think that everything in the garden should be hunky-dory and rosy in terms of finances, and it's still not that. You know, I feel like a broken record sometimes when I'm talking about it, but until Power Court is up there, until they're that sustainable, you've got to look at the Premier League money is just get a massive hop, step and a jump towards that end goal, and it's not there yet. But there are some people that go, well, it's not good enough and you need to be spending the money. But as I've said, if money was the be-all or an end-all, then Burnley would not have got relegated from the Premier League last season, and Leeds would have got promoted, and that doesn't work out like that. But I don't know how you sort of bring the two sort of sides together there. The sensible one is that everything has got to be about this club having a future, because if you weren't there back in the day, came that close, really that close to it, there not being a football club. And if you were there, it was horrible at the time. And if you weren't there, well, you should be glad that you've had a 10-year period of relative success, well, unbridled success from where Luton were. But back then it was horrific. And you don't want to go back there. And they've done everything they can in 2020 to ensure that can't happen. They've done a wonderful job at it. And, you know, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff doesn't get seen, doesn't get talked about. There's various reasons for that. Some of them are commercially sensitive and stuff like that. But you do know about the big things. Everybody knows about the big things that have been done to ensure there's a strong foundation. And I just think sometimes maybe people forget it. There will be people that just don't care and overlook it and just think that everything is about the here and the now. But last season, this season, however Luton do, season by season, is almost irrelevant if you ain't got a football club to support in the first place. Yeah,
that's it. I mean, ultimately, reading between the lines and paraphrasing Wilco's programme notes of the other night, Luton Town aren't going to be held to ransom. That's the stance that they've taken. It's a commendable stance. They feel they can be successful using that stance, and then that's the way it is. We've still spent, well, what's been reported to be 6 million on Mark McGuinness, which would be a club transfer record, rising to 8, some say 8, some say 10, but rising above 6 anyway. We brought a guy in on loan who, if we sign, we're pretty confident we're not going to get much change out of 5 million euros. And I would imagine there'll have been some kind of loan fee in that to appease that in some way, shape or form. not the levels that Sheffield United were paying loan fees for that Crystal Palace dude or anything like that. But the fact that we haven't got an option to buy would have that fee kind of lower, but we would be taking on his wages and things. We don't know how much we're going to have to pay for Rue Walters. I keep on hearing that we've signed him on a free. Nonsense. We signed him for nothing right now, but there will be a fee. That'll go down to the tribunal to sort out.
Yeah.
That could be anything up to 7 figures, depending on what they charge.
He's just got picked for England as well.
Just about to say, the more times he plays for England age groups, we're only going to have to pay a lot more money until that's settled. So, we haven't signed Ruel Walters on a free transfer. The only 2 free transfers we've signed this summer are Liam Walsh and Shandon Baptiste. The others, have or will cost us money. So they have spent. Have they spent as much as I expected them to spend? Probably not, if I'm being honest. I thought they might spend a little bit more just based on how much they spent last summer. But the fact that they spent so much last summer probably highlights. I really didn't expect many incomings.
No. I
should also say they've also spent €4 million on Lamine Fanner. What are we going with?
But the
there was a bunch of
is left to be.
We'll go with Fanner for now until we hear otherwise.
I think that's kind of like a Swedish pronunciation, though, isn't it? And he's Spanish, but I don't know. We'll see.
I ditched Spanish at school as soon as I could do, so forgive me. But €4 million, this seems to have been the touted figure based on a lot of the media sort of coverage of that particular signing. So that would therefore take us, with the players that we've actually signed, beyond €10 million this summer. There is still this PSR stuff that they're having to balance out, and you only get £13 million losses in the Championship. I know we've got parachute payments to offset that, but we do have other fees and things like that. But there is this growing belief that they haven't spent money anywhere else, and that is just not true. They've spent money on the training ground. Now, on one hand, people say we haven't spent any money, and then the same people will say, why do we keep getting so many injuries? So, yes, they haven't been held to ransom on players, but they are going down the route of trying to solve this injury crisis by improving the training facilities. And therefore, the players that we have got, touch wood, aren't going to go down as regularly in the future. One such thing, and I think I highlighted it on a previous podcast, pitches at the training ground were waterlogged last season. Now, based on the fact it piddled down with rain today on the 2nd of September, chances are they're going to get waterlogged again when the winter really hits this year. However, they've now installed undersoil heating, or will have. So I don't know if it's happened yet or it is happening, but it's in the vicinity of one of the pitches to have undersoil heating, so they can train on a perfectly good pitch. I think it was Gabe Osho in particular whose injury was put down to the fact that we were training on waterlogged pitches all the time, wasn't it? So that's not going to happen now. So that's one kind of prevention cure for some of these injuries. Will it prevent all of them? No, because a lot of them are impact injuries during games of football. But it will prevent it in a lot of ways. And if it just prevents one injury, it's a help. But undersoil heating, it's not my forte, but I'm assuming you're not getting much change out of 7 figures to whack a load of, it's a little bit more than heated pipes underneath it, isn't it? But, it costs an awful lot of money to do that. I mentioned also previously, they've brought cryo chambers, they've brought all the other recovery tools that help, which you're going to need in the Championship of 46 game season. I know for a fact that players have left a game straight after the final whistle and gone straight down to the brace and into the cryotherapy thing to be ready for the next game. We know from the playoff failure 3 seasons ago now that Elijah needed that just to even be able to walk on the pitch that night, not run.
Yeah.
So that was another important tool. Again, it all costs money. Maybe the club are their own worst enemy by not coming out and shouting from the rooftops what they're spending on down at the training ground. Maybe that is an issue. Maybe we're close enough that we see it, or James goes down to the training ground for press conferences and sees this sort of stuff in operation. Maybe that the club could help themselves by doing that, but they are spending money and they are looking at ways of improving things without necessarily bringing players through the door. But my last thing on this, and I've said it right since we just started doing this season of the podcast, I will take to my grave that the 25 men that are lined up in our squad when that squad list gets announced is a stronger 25 men than the 25 men that took us out of this division 2 seasons ago. And you won't be able to convince me otherwise.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And that's what we were talking about all throughout the summer. That it's almost impossible to be as strong as you were last season in the Premier League. And they're not. But they can be stronger than the previous Championship side. And I think they are. And let's not forget, like you've already said, they're only 1 point worse off than that season. And when Nathan Jones hopped off to
Southampton,
same bloody shirts, aren't they?
Same basket key.
Same shirts. What was it, 10th in the league? Looking absolutely nowhere near going anywhere near the Premier League at that stage, and then it happened. So
it is an insult to Rob Edwards to say that he didn't do anything other than just followed on from Nathan Jones. It's nonsense. His second game in charge, we went down to 10 men. He made a substitution that changed the game, brought Corley Woodrow on for a midfielder, not a like for like, which Nathan's subs often were, for a midfielder, and won the game and set us on our journey. We are not winning that Norwich game under Nathan Jones. We're just not. All right, there was no evidence in the 6 years that he managed us, or whatever long it was, that when we were down to 10 men, he would make a proactive change like that and go and win a game against a side who were in the top 6 at the time. There was no evidence of it. And what happened from that? 3 days later, we went to QPR, smashed them 3-0, and the train was off and it was going. Then Rob brought Cody Dramé, Marvellous Nakamba in, and once those two were in place, it was full steam ahead to our destination. It is so insulting to Rob Edwards that he didn't play the significant role in taking us to the Premier League, because he did.
Yeah, I don't understand those points of view whatsoever. Maybe they're just instant kick-outs at something, and usually the manager gets it in the neck. And obviously, as you heard in that press conference, he's saying that it's on him, and
which he needs to stop saying.
I don't think that game, that QPR, you can pick out other things, but that game I don't think was on him. It was on some catastrophic mistakes that him, me, you, I don't think we were able to explain.
The only way it's on him is if he forgets to get his FIFA controller and dribble Elijah around the goalkeeper and tap it in like you do on FIFA 25 or whatever. But it's not. This is real football. These are human beings. They're not robots.
But I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to take the heat off the players. But I'd hate for it to turn in any way. There was sort of slight signs of it. I think that it will improve with results, with not losing in that fashion to QPR. Let's be honest, we'd said it in the previous podcast, there's loads of needle in that game, and the two clubs don't like each other. So if it was anybody else, perhaps not as bad, but it would have still annoyed people. I think there's a cumulative effect of the, however many 20 plus games of not winning a game of football in 2024, even though you can say that some of that's Premier League, and they were really shot through injury, and that's starting to ease now. So I can't get on board with that point of view whatsoever after 5 games.
That's the key. That's the key line. After 4 games. Now, if this is still going on after 14 games, then we've got issues. And then these points about Rob Edwards might carry a little bit more weight. That's certainly not when they're being compared to Nathan Jones, but in isolation of just him, then that's fair enough. If we're still playing this formation and we're still getting dragged over to one side and we're still making these mistakes and still conceding these goals, then yeah, that's on him. 4 games, no one can really do a great deal in 4 games, particularly when it's 4 games when player might be going one day, and like Joe Taylor, he wasn't at training on Thursday, he was off negotiating a move to Huddersfield, and they had to pull him back because the move that they had to line up ahead of Joe Taylor, which James highlighted earlier, was meant to be Tom Cannon, fell through. Then you got to get Joe Taylor back. So you got people coming, going, here, there, everywhere in the it's not an excuse, or it is an excuse, but it's not one that anyone really factors in, nor should they. But now we've got 2 weeks of solid training where the 25 men or however many it is are ours, and they're going to be ours for 3 months at the very least, probably 4, because no business is done in January until the 31st. And now's the time. Get your head down and kick on. Now, are we going to play a back 4 when Marvellous is back? Let's find out. Marvellous is going to be back. If he's not back for the Millwall game, Tuesday night will be interesting, actually. See if any of these injured players get a run out in this under-21 game.
I think he said before in the pre-match to QPR that they might utilise that.
It's a weird time to play an under-21 game when there's international under-21 games going ahead this weekend. Not necessarily Luton, but I'm assuming Rangers have got some under-21 players that are at least in a Scotland under-21 squad. Otherwise, what's their under-21s doing when there's only 2 teams in that league? So yeah, by Millwall, I'm not necessarily saying that we've got to go and beat Millwall. Crikey, I'd love us to beat Millwall.
I couldn't think of probably a worse place to go, to be honest, after
No,
this.
and it's another 12:30 kickoff as well, which is another pain in the ass. But now really is where we've really got to knuckle down and we've got to do it. Any uncertainty, any excuses really have stopped now. They stopped when that transfer window went. Now we've got what we want. We've got players who are fit. There's nobody who's injured. Now we've got to get on with the job at hand, which is winning games of football. They all want to be playing in the Premier League. Their best bet from now really to be playing in the Premier League is to get Luton promoted back to the Premier League, because I wouldn't have thought anyone who's panicking from the Premier League in January are going to sign Championship players in January. They'll be signing from abroad and everything else. Ipswich have cleaned up the Championship market anyway, really. They've left 1 or 2 scraps in case they need them in January. But by and large, I mean, even Burnley didn't go mad in January, and they were doomed, weren't they, in January? They'd obviously shot their load in the first part of the season. So really the best chance that these players have got of being in the Premier League next season by absolute certainty is to get Luton promoted. They might get a move next summer to the Premier League. They might do. But if they haven't got Luton promoted, you'd have thought teams would look elsewhere with some big clubs in this league, your Burnleys, your Leeds, your Sheffield Uniteds. And now's the time to knuckle down and get on and do it. We're not far away. We're nowhere near as far away as the doom and gloom merchants would have you believe. And I understand the doom and gloom. I get it. Maybe it's the fact that I was there 20 odd years ago when literally you started a week on a Monday not knowing if the football club was there on the Saturday. Maybe that's mellowed me out a little bit. And if it has, I'm kind of lucky in that I can get a bit of perspective. And I understand it because prior to then, the Saturday afternoon was everything. You know, if we lost, the week was shit, and if we won, it was an absolutely fantastic week. I get that, and I'm not at that stage in my life now. But we're nowhere near as bad as it's being made out to be. It's 4 games in a 46-game sprint. Would we have liked 12 points from these 4 games? Yep. Let me just scroll down the Championship table and find the team that's got 12 points. Oh, there's one of them, Sunderland. You know, the rest of them are all losing games as well.
And that will happen as well. It's you got to remember it is a Championship. But
it's a 2-game league. I say it every single time we're in this league. You win 2 games, you go up 10 places. If you can go up 10 places. You lose 2 games, you shoot down 12 places. It's an absolute bonkers league, this one. And we've just got to get on the winning cycle and get ourselves up that table.
Yeah, and as much as Luton are still currently getting punished for mistakes, particularly in the QPR game, it won't last in the Championship. Everybody beats everybody. It is Crackers League, and you know, for me, I would want more points. Yes. Am I concerned that Luton aren't going to be anywhere near their goals towards the end of the season? Absolutely not, because I'd never thought that they would be top 2. I just didn't. I thought top 6 would be fine, get in the playoffs, and have another crack at it then. And I think that's still achievable, and it is still achievable because of the points tally that Luton have now compared to that promotion winning season, as we said. And it's too early to get so grossly upset by everything. On the whole, you can be upset by that football match, absolutely. You need to go to the seaside for a day to calm down, didn't you?
It was only the opponent that hacked me off. that they offered nothing, and we beat ourselves. If they'd beaten us like Burnley beat us, then, you know, I'd have stayed away from the seaside and we'd have recorded this last night and it'd have been out to you by now. But that's the one thing that does get me. I have no problem when Luton lose a game of football. I don't like it. I do not go to football matches to watch Luton lose. I don't, and I don't like it. And we're getting too used to it, having not been used to it at all for 10 years. But when Luton beat themselves, that's when when no one's done anything special to beat us. They're the ones that still disappoint me to this day, and I can't get over those ones as quickly as I can. You know, like last season when we went to Man City and lost. I mean, that was shrugged off before Haaland even left the pitch. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And many others. The Bournemouth one hurt me. Of course, it hurt me. It hurt everyone. But by and large, defeats don't hurt me as much as what they normally do. But this one did, purely because it was of our own doing. And who knows? Generally, in the past. And maybe we're guilty for constantly referencing the past because we are a different club now. We were on the up and the hunters when we've done this podcast in every season, and now we're the hunted, and it is a different situation. So maybe we shouldn't harp on about the past quite as much as what we do. But generally, when this side have taken a beating that hurts, they come back and they come out fighting, don't they? They used to be really good at retaliating from a hard, nasty defeat, and okay, 2-1's not a big defeat, but the manner of it will certainly have, you know, they'd have gone home on Friday night, you know, and if there were any cats to be kicked, not that I recommend it, but, you know, metaphorically they'll have been kicked, and it will hurt. And the fact that they've got 2 weeks to stew over it will get a reaction out of these boys, because they've often given that reaction. But we just need a smooth 90 minutes, don't we, where we can get a couple of goals in front and just ride it out to victory and just turn the tables on this depressing run of form.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's how they do that is the really crucial thing. And I often think that you just got to sort of go back to basics, but that is an argument for when things aren't going at all well. And
we just got to keep.
We said before, it's not that they're playing abjectly badly.
We've just got to play like we did on Friday night. If we play Friday night's game out 42 more times, Luton win the 20 games that I mentioned that we have to win at the start of the season. It's a little bit more than that, isn't it? 23, 24. You're looking at around about 75 points for the playoffs. So let's call it 22 wins and 9 draws. That's perfectly achievable. If we play Friday night 42 more times, we win 21 of the games. I'm absolutely certain of it, because we do not make that mistake at the back 21 times. And we do not miss that chance once we've started scoring them. It's just a cumulative effect, and it just happened in the 190 minutes. But they'll be working hard, and who knows? Let's hope that Millwall yields a positive result. And then it's Sheffield Wednesday at home. Since that first game where they beat Plymouth, everyone seems to be beating Plymouth. They've done nothing. Then it's the aforementioned Plymouth. I mean, if we go down there and lose on a Friday night in front of the cameras, then you're like, and we haven't won against Millwall and Sheffield Wednesday, then you're kind of thinking, eek. And then I think it's Oxford at home after that. So you've got 4 more games there, and I said it after the Burnley game, the fixtures leveled right out. We haven't taken advantage of it yet, but we've still got 4 games where we can take advantage of it. If you pick up 2 wins and 2 draws, 8 points, that gets you on 9 points for the season for 8 games, and you're on your way. Obviously, we hope we can get 10 or 12 points from those 4 games, and I'm sure if we start well against Millwall, we can do. But that would just go to show just how easy it is. It's like a T20 cricket team that don't hit a boundary in the first 2 overs, and they've only got 6 overs of the power play to hit boundaries. But all of a sudden, in the 3rd over, 2 or 3 go to the rope, and suddenly you've gone from going at 3 and over to 9 and over, and you were away and gone. And that's this early in the season. That's what it's like. Obviously, if this form,
take your word for it.
Obviously, if this form,
anyone knows what he just said to me.
We're in the summer, mate. Everyone, if this form is games 20 to 24, then that's different. But 0 to 4, so many teams aren't looking great. I watched Burnley Blackburn on Saturday. One of my best mates is a big Blackburn fan, so I watched that. Burnley weren't much copping that game.
They've lost a bunch of players as well. And this is what it all changes. It is ridiculous. There's nothing we can do about it. we can have a right old moan, but the fact that the transfer window is still open a month into the season is frankly bonkers. But, this is the point now where you get this 2 weeks to work on things and we'll see. And we'll make a judgment after that. I think the vitriol of it is something that is new to me, and I don't like it because I don't think this club deserves that yet.
No, I agree. As I said, I thought the reaction after the game was, not great. We're better than that, I think. And the last 10 years tells us what happens when we do go down that slippery slope, and it's not great. So, as one, let's try and turn it round on the pitch, off the pitch, and everything else. I mean, whilst the players were clueless on the pitch after the second goal, it was morgue, wasn't it, in the stands. So no one helped anyone. The players didn't help us. We didn't help the players.
That's another thing, isn't it? I mean, I don't like it when people argue amongst each other, but I have seen people going, well, did you do enough from the stands? Did you create enough?
It's a mutual thing, isn't it? It's
absolutely.
not a them and us. You got to do your bit for us to do our bit. It's together. That's the word, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What did the wise man say? Stronger the team, stronger the team. We've all got to stick with this team and be a team. I've seen a lot of people say that our success was down to being hard to beat and getting the ball forward and being physical and all this. Yeah, maybe. But what made us so successful over the last 10 years was everyone, from top, middle, and bottom. Not that I'm a fan of Strike It Lucky. There's one for the 80s crowd. Everyone was together. We were right behind each other. And we need to stay like that. Otherwise it will unravel, and it will unravel quickly. And we will end up being the Sunderland that ended up into League One and being the crux of all the jokes after their Netflix documentaries and everything else. That's where we'll go if we don't stick together. So let's just stick together. It's early days.
It's the Premier Leagueification of supporting your team, isn't it? And that's one of probably the downfalls of going up. But a lot of the Premier League couldn't understand what happened last season with Luton, why you'd be there and happy, not necessarily happy, but they're supporting and clapping. And that's what supporting is. You don't have to be happy about losing, but there's a way to go about it. And if Luton lose that, it's very hard to get that back, because you started from such a low base last time, in the doldrums, and then it got to the promised land. But that's not going to happen now, unless you want to go all the way back down again. And trust me, that was horrible the last time and the time before. To go all the way back up again, do you really want that, or just want to have a solid base here and then try and get back to the Premier League and do it better next time?
Yep. Let's just hope September yields a few winning games of football and we can turn this ship around. That's pretty much it for this episode of the podcast. A longer episode than normal. Usually in an international break, we would do a deep dive. We're not doing a deep dive in this international break, not because of results or anything like that. We're going to work on our studio and things like that. So we're going to take up that opportunity rather than bringing you a deep dive. So we've kind of merged it all into one. You've got the international break to watch or listen to this. So if you've got all the way through this at the first time of asking, well done. It is a lengthy one. We do apologise, but once we're out of this international break, we will be back to normal. There'll be no more seaside trips for myself. Even Jimbo's not going on holiday either. So we are here for the long term, and we'll be back to our regular schedule from that Millwall game onwards. Obviously, we'll get the Millwall preview out to you slightly earlier than what we normally would do, being it's a 12:30 kickoff. And then from there onwards, we'll be back to a normal schedule. So thanks for bearing with us for these first sort of 4 games. We have been a bit all over the place with when we've released podcasts and how long they've been and everything else. It's been a pretty eventful month on and off the pitch for James and I. And we're just finishing up with the studio, and we're all back to normal. No correct scores from...
Again, I got the correct score, just the bloody wrong way.
Yeah,
around.
I got the correct score the wrong way around this time.
Might influence my score prediction for the Millwall game, maybe.
Yeah, hopefully they get it the right way around this time. Yeah, no correct scores. Not surprisingly, not many Luton fans were going for a QPR win. So we're all got to do better after the international break in terms of the score prediction. Someone did say, actually, 1 point for a correct result, 3 points for a correct score. There's merits to it, but we haven't even got that yet. So
maybe we should get a little
leaderboard
here on the back wall of the studio. Maybe we should do that.
we could
Tell me that again. So 1
point for getting the correct result, so win, draw, or loss.
Yeah.
3 points if you nail the correct score.
That seems good. That seems fair. Because we're bloody rubbish at the.
We are.
Just
Yeah.
getting it
Otherwise,
bang
we're
on.
going to have a duck egg after 46 games, and that doesn't look good.
Let's have a go at that then. We'll get some sort of scoreboard mocked up and.
We'll go back and see if anyone's got any points from. Most people predict a Luton win, don't they? So there aren't going to be too many people who have even got a point in the result yet. So we'll do that then. We'll do point for the result, 3 points for a correct score, and you can all get your thinking caps on ahead of the Millwall preview, which will be out next week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. However it is that you've consumed this podcast, James and I really do appreciate it, particularly as we've tried to paint a positive outlook on what was a pretty hard to take evening on Friday. Thanks also to the Barber Club and the Lower Level in Luton for hosting our new studio, which we're going to work on over the next couple of weeks, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. Until next time, which will be a preview of what is now suddenly a really important afternoon at the new Den. Come on, you Hatters.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul. We're Luton people.